The most financially obedient people I know are also the most financially stuck. And the reason why will make you question everything you were ever taught about money in church. If you tithe every month and still can't get ahead financially, this video is going to change the way you see your faith and your finances forever. Let me tell you about a woman. We'll call her Grace. Grace has been faithful her entire adult life. She tithes every single month, 10%, no excuses, no matter how tight things get. She prays over her finances. She trusts God with her money. She does every single thing her church told her to do. And at 47 years old, she has less than $800 in savings. Not because she's lazy, not because she doesn't believe, but because nobody, not her pastor, not her parents, not one teacher in her entire life, ever gave her the other half of the blueprint. Today, we are breaking down the money habit every church taught you and why it might be the very thing keeping you broke. By the end of this video, you will never see your faith and your finances the same way again. Stay with me. Here's what the faith community got right. And I want to be clear about this because it matters. Generosity is real. Giving is a spiritual discipline. Tithing has deep biblical roots, and there is something genuinely powerful about choosing an open hand over a closed fist. That part is true. That part stays. But here is what almost nobody talks about from the pulpit. Giving without a wealth-building strategy is like putting fuel in a car with the handbrake on. Every week, faithfully, you show up, you pour in the fuel, you never miss. You do it with a glad heart. But the car doesn't move, not because the engine is broken, not because your faith is weak, not because the fuel is wrong, but because one thing is still engaged that nobody ever told you to release. You have been fueling faithfully. The handbrake has been on the whole time. And today, we release it. The habit that's keeping millions of faith-driven people financially stuck isn't bad character. It isn't a lack of belief. It is simply this. They were taught to release money and never taught how to multiply it. And the Bible, the same Bible your church reads every Sunday, has an entire blueprint for multiplication sitting right there in plain sight. It just rarely makes it into the sermon. Now, stay with me here, because what I'm about to share over the next few minutes is the part most people in this space are too uncomfortable to say out loud. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22. Let it land as you hear it. A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, not just their children's children, 2 generations forward. That verse is not describing someone who gave everything away and trusted God to fill the gap. That is describing someone who built something deliberately, strategically, with intention, over time. Think of it this way. Imagine a farmer who every single season faithfully scatters his seed into the field. Beautiful, generous, never holds back, but he never tends the soil, never waters, never waits for the harvest. He just keeps scattering. Year after year, the fields are full of seed and empty of fruit. That's not a seed problem. That's a missing second step. Proverbs 13 is the second step. It has always been in the text. It just wasn't in the teaching. And then look at the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. The servant who buried what he was given, who played it safe, who didn't risk, who kept everything exactly as it was, he was the one who was rebuked. The servants who multiplied, who doubled what they received, were the ones called faithful. Let that sit for a moment. The Bible does not call safety faithful. It calls multiplication faithful. So the question was never whether a person of faith should have wealth. Scripture answered that a long time ago. The real question, the uncomfortable one, is why has the church spent generations teaching giving without ever teaching growing? And here's where it gets deeper. Stay with me. For centuries, and I mean centuries, faith communities, and particularly Black and diaspora communities, were handed a very specific theology around money. Suffering is holy, poverty is humble, wealth is dangerous, your reward is in heaven. Now, I'm not here to tear down everything you've ever been taught, but I want you to notice something that most people never connect. The same communities who were taught to give the most historically had the least access to the financial tools that actually build wealth. No investment education in the home, no property ownership conversations, no compound interest explained at the kitchen table, no generational transfer of assets, no one sitting you down and saying, here is how money multiplies over time, and the habit that quietly filled that entire gap, giving faithfully every single week, with nothing multiplying on the other side. Studies show the average faith community household gives between 4 and 10% of their income, yet holds less than £5,000 in investable assets. Listen to that again. Giving more than almost anyone, holding less than almost anyone. That is not a generosity problem. That is a structurally missing second half of the equation. Grace isn't a random story. She is a pattern. She is your aunt. She is your mom. She is the woman at your church who is always there for everyone else and is quietly drowning in private. And maybe, if you're completely honest right now, she is you. If that landed, what I'm about to share next is for you specifically. The complete blueprint looks like this. Giving and building are not opposites. They are not in conflict. They are two hands doing two completely different jobs, and you need both to carry what you were created to carry. Your giving hand, your tithe, your generosity, your seed, that is your spiritual posture. Open hands, trust, that stays, that never changes. Your building hand, your investments, your assets, your compounding strategy, that is your stewardship. That is multiplication. That is legacy. That is fruit. Most faith-driven people were only ever taught to use one hand, and you cannot carry the weight of generational wealth with one hand. You were never meant to. Here's what the practical shift looks like in real life. For every pound you release in giving, you also begin directing a portion into something that grows. Not a large amount to start, not a complicated strategy to figure out overnight. An index fund, a workplace pension you're actually maximizing, a small income-producing asset. The vehicle will be different for everyone. The principle does not change. You give as an act of faith. You build as an act of stewardship. Both are biblical. Both are required. One without the other is half a life. When you separate your faith from your financial strategy, money becomes a source of quiet shame you carry into every season. When you bring them back together, when you realize that multiplication is not greed, it is faithfulness. Money stops being something you're behind on and starts being something you're stewarding forward. Grace made that decision. Not when her income changed, not when her circumstances changed, when her understanding changed. 18 months later, she had her first investment account. She had her first small asset. She had an emergency fund for the first time in her adult life. Her salary hadn't exploded. Her mindset had. And for the first time ever, her money had a direction that matched the size of her faith. I want to say something to you directly before we finish. If you have felt shame around your finances, if you have prayed and believed and given faithfully and still felt stuck and confused and honestly a little embarrassed, that shame is not yours to carry. You are not given the full blueprint. You were handed half a map and expected to find the treasure. That is not your fault. But staying stuck once you know the truth, once you've seen the full verse, once you understand what multiplication actually means in Scripture, that part becomes a choice. You were created for abundance, not abundance as a slogan, not abundance as a prosperity gospel tagline, abundance as a calling to build, to steward, to leave something behind for the people who come after you. You are not behind. You are right on time. And the cycle you were born into is not the cycle you have to pass on. The moment most people finish a video like this, something shifts. They feel the momentum. They open an account. They search a few things. They genuinely believe